Yeah, you feel like do something? Yeah. Well, we want to do some mediumship now, so is that all right with you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for that first part. Yeah.
That's all right. Get it.
No.
Get told off.
It's so helpful, it's not telling off.
Yeah,
it's just so helpful. And then Mary was just going a bit deeper in the break, just about our flawed definitions, of what we believe in loving a man is, and how we're just I'm on auto response to the injuries that are within me towards my dad, and I don't even think, it's like I'm so sensitive to avoiding the feelings
correct
that were there, that it's not that I don't have the inspiration or sometimes even the thought, it's just that I don't want to be sensitive to doing the opposite.
Correct.
Because of the pain that is now exposed, even as I'm talking to you, of what it means if I truly love a man in response to what I want to do to love a man, to avoid all of that.
Yeah. So it's a lot about self-preservation, isn't it?
Yeah, so much. Except it's not preserving me, because then I'm hurting every other man and woman as well, and myself.
And not only that, your condition degrades every time you meet an addiction. And so you remember I once drew on a board how, you progress a little bit in the course of a day, and then you do some things in the day, and you progress a little bit in a day and do some things in the day that are sins, and then you progress. And the net result is that at the end of the day, it's the same as you were at the beginning of the day. And the main reason why most people don't progress is because they do some things towards their progress, but then they undo those things by meeting addictions and breaking God's laws and breaking the laws of harmony with truth and love, and lacking in faith and other things, or refuse to take action when they need to, or take some action when they shouldn't do, And so in the course of a day, you end up starting at a point where you've got a certain condition, your soul has a certain condition, and then at the end of the day, you end up in the same condition. And the reality is we can progress every day. We can make sure we end the days better than we began the days. And you can do that every day, right? But for most people, particularly on earth, that never happens, because you do some things to improve the condition, then there's a whole lot of circumstances, events and addictions of other people and everything that kick in, and we degrade our condition. And so we just end up sort of oftentimes cycling around a certain condition which is slowly degrading. So like over 20 years you can see the degradation sometimes, but you can't see it in the day, because it's just like a cycle. I did this good thing and I did this, and there's this good thing, but I did these bad things. But the trouble is, a lot of times I don't see when something's bad or good. I don't really know what is bad or good many times. And so you end up doing some things which God defines as good, but you don't know. Sometimes you think they're bad, but sometimes you think they're good. And then you do some other things which God defines as evil or unloving, and you think, oh, that was good, I did that, that gave me a good kick, like a good addiction me. And so you end up in this cycle where you're just cycling back and forward along a certain condition. And this is why the majority of people, once they're 7 or 8 years of age, that's usually the condition that they maintain for a large portion of their life, which is slowly degrading from that point to their death. And very little improvement occurs. Whereas if love becomes the guiding principle of every action taken, of every decision made, of every choice feeling that you have, and you just choose to become sensitive to love in particular, sensitive what is love and what isn't love, then the chances of you doing this slow degradation in your life are completely avoided. You end up progressing. So, you could progress through your life, that by the time you reach the end of your life, whenever that is, that you never even get to see the hells unless you choose to visit. You never even go there because you've allowed your soul progression to grow and grow and grow and grow to a point where you're beyond the point where the correction of the hells is required for you. Yeah. So, they're very important principles to understand when it comes to your future progress. Yeah. Nikki? And if we go over to the girls with the other mic over here.
Just off that then, Jesus, what you said.
Yep.
So, can you have points when you go up, down, big emotion, big cause, feeling, boom.
Yeah.
Up, down, big
That's right.
boom.
Yeah.
So you can still have the big jumps as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can. But obviously you. Well, you think about it in terms of exercise. Like, you know, many times you go, oh, I need to get fit. So, you know, all this effort put in for a few weeks or a month or two, and surely your body will improve because you've put in the big effort and the body will certainly improve. But then you get to a place where you get tired of it and exhausted with it and all those kind of things, and what do? You revert back to prior behaviour, usually emotionally driven behaviour, and from that point it slowly degrades again. Or even if it was maintained, it's not getting better, is it? Whereas if you make increments every day, where you just do something regularly, all the time, you can see over the course of a year, you're going to notice some big differences. Yeah. So, I was saying to Mary this morning, we were going for a walk, that the majority of people watch videos of us like 15 years ago and think we're the same people, but we're completely different people than we were 15 years ago, because we've made, you know, incremental changes that occur over large periods of time, and we haven't done videos now for, you know, probably, what is it, since 2016 or 17 or thereabouts, almost like 8 years. So how would you know what we're like if we are progressing? You wouldn't know, would you? Because if a person is regularly progressing, what they were like 5 years ago has got almost completely different to what they're like now. Yeah. But if a person is doing the other thing, what they're like in 5 years' time is generally a little bit worse than what they were today. You know, that's the main difference. So consistency of effort in harmony with love is also an important factor.
And that's where sincerity comes in, though.
Correct.
Because if you're sincere, you're going to put in the effort. You're going to spend that time doing that instead of doing.
It's going to be your highest priority. We had a chat with Di and Brittany. We went to dinner with them this week, and we just had a chat about what is your primary focus in your life. If your primary focus is your relationships or your friendships or your work or, you know, building an empire for yourself or whatever are your primary goals in your life, if it's not God, then whatever those goals are finite. They are going to end. They are going to eventually get to a point where you're going to be bored with them. They're not going to be satisfying, right? If your desire is for God and relationship with God first, this is something that can drive you infinitely. You will always be impressed. You will always be growing. You will always be changing. You will always be. There will always be adjustments that you're making. So the key is substantially is, what is my focus? Yeah. So the key is, what is my focus? If my focus is on God and my progress towards God, then that's going to pull me through everything, and it's going to ensure my infinite growth. But if my focus is, I just want a good relationship with Mary, then once I believe I have a good relationship with Mary, that's going to be the end of my progress. Right? And that's not going to be good for Mary or I, really, because we'll both miss out on the joys of infinite progress. We'll end up being bored with each other, even. Make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so the really important thing is that if you can focus your attention on desire for God is the most important thing. Now, So we were talking during the week, Di and Brittany, about why is it that sometimes we remove people quite quickly from coming along in terms of, for God's way, not to these groups, but to God's way. And one of the reasons is because the focus of God's way is a relationship with God, living your life in harmony with God's way. If we can feel that a person doesn't have that desire, and it's quite clear through their actions they don't have that desire, then there's little point in being involved in God's way. Because the purpose of the God's way organisation is to have a group of people with that desire, so that group of people can create something that's in harmony with that desire. So there are people who come along who are nice enough people. They're nice people, they, easy to get along with and quite friendly and everything. It's very unlikely that there are people who will not like that coming along. But how many of them actually have that strong desire for God? Strong desire that that's going to be their relationship, the infinite relationship, the infinite growth. How many people have that desire? That's rare to find people with that desire. Yeah. But that's the kind of people we want to find in the God's Way organisation. That's the people we want to find, because as an organisation, it's not an organisation for the creation of the organisation. It's an organisation where a group of people who have that desire can create together, create things in the world together. And that's the purpose of the organisation. The purpose of Mary and I visiting people and teaching is to expose people to God's truth, which is a completely different purpose actually to God's way in a way. Because the purpose of God's way is to find the people who want that relationship with God and create something together. For Mary and I, our purpose of travelling is just to share truth with as many people as we can. And whoever decides they want to, put God first in their life, hopefully we'll find those people, right, in the process. But we don't. At this stage, all we're trying to do is share as much as we can, so that as many people hear about it as possibly can. Helen, you were...
Oh, seems off the topic now.
Sorry.
I was just thinking about authority and our acquiescence to authority in terms of that whole scenario this morning, because we're brought up to, obey authority, and so we look at certain people and think they have the authority and they know what they're doing, rather than feel.
True, but interestingly enough, Eloisa is the managing director of God's Way. She's the one with the authority.
Yeah.
So...
What do you mean? That's what I mean.
That's what she's saying. She
Yeah,
followed
we
Eloisa's direction.
acquiesce to that rather than...
No, but what did Eloisa follow?
Yeah.
Well, no. She followed her addiction.
Yeah.
Right? If you are following a person who's following their addiction, where are you going to end up?
Oh, yeah.
In their addiction.
That's right. Yeah.
This is why in the first century I called it blind guides leading the blind. You understand? This is what we're doing. We often follow people. Now you're saying it's because of authority. I don't believe it's because of authority. For many of you, it's got nothing to do with authority. It's got to do with being just afraid of speaking up, being afraid of looking a fool, being afraid of being different, being afraid of somebody criticising you openly. But, there's a whole heap of different fears that would cause you to do what you do. It's not just authority. I understand, though, that authority is an issue, but many of you are anti-authority. Is what I feel from you. Many of you are like lawless people from God's perspective, anti-authority, and yet you call it following authority. So I don't feel so. I think it's mostly following addiction, whatever your addiction is.
Okay.
Yeah?
Thanks. Yeah.
To carry on from what Alan was saying,
Yeah.
I had my thoughts and I said a few things, and then I reflected back at myself and said, well, I'm so unloving I wouldn't know, so I just followed. But then I went further just now and thought, that's what I have in me, is that I want to be mummied, and therefore I'll just, if you know, okay, I'll follow you, but I haven't...
Even if you tell me you know, I'll follow you.
Yeah. But I haven't taken it on myself to reflect on, exactly what is a loving thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, well, I believe now, that I haven't grown in love because I haven't taken the steps to find out what loving things are, even if they're presented to me.
Yes, and this raises the issue of personal responsibility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Each of us have a personal responsibility to be loving. The reason why God attributes to you everything you choose to do that's unloving and everything you choose to do that is loving is because God says, I created a responsible being, and this responsible being needs to make its own, and I'm God's laws are saying we are enforcing this responsible being to be responsible for themselves, even when they don't want to be. Like, even when you feel like you want to run away from that. And so, yes, this is an issue of personal responsibility. When it comes to sacrificing any principle for the sake of an addiction, it means you're not understanding personal responsibility at all.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you understood it, you would go, I can't do that. I can't allow that damage to happen to me or to somebody else. You know, so this is where it gets down to sort of grasping emotionally, and this is why we need to receive God's love. Receiving God's love causes you to grasp emotionally these things instantly, like in a moment, not having to think for days and days and days and ponder. Although when you're coming from a position of sin, the pondering is good. You know, sorry about that. That's my phone. The pondering is good. The pondering is good for you when you're coming from a position of sin, because at least you're going to think, am I being loving? But the way to become loving isn't by thinking. It's going to be by dealing with the emotions that cause you to be unloving and releasing them, and dealing with the lack of desire to be loving and dealing with that. Right? And so what I'm saying in this example that we've given today, there was a lack of desire in each person involved to not do the loving thing. To do the loving. There was a lack of desire to do the loving thing. There was this inclination to not do the loving thing because of addiction, and therefore the desire is not strong enough to do the loving thing. Right? So that's also a problem, isn't it? There's the addictions, which are, when you're in a place of sin, they're going to be there, but there has to also be a lack of desire to do the loving thing. Because if you desire to do the loving thing, your guides and other people who are in a loving place will give you inspiration, and you'll want to do it straight away. You want to go, yeah, you're right, I'm out of harmony love. Got to do something about that right now. You want that, right? The fact that that's not happening is indicative of the fact that the desire isn't present. And remember, every desire you have is a prayer. So if your desire is to meet addictions, you're really praying to God. Not that that prayer is going to be answered, but you're really praying to God, please help me meet my addiction. But if your desire is to be more loving, you're really praying to God, help me be more loving. And you'd be of more open inspiration under those circumstances to be loving. So it's very important to understand the dynamics of what happened today, and the underlying quite large principles which are involved in it, isn't it? You see that? Like it might seem like, cleaning a plank is an innocent thing, but it's really not that innocent, right? But of course, in terms of cleaning a plank versus killing somebody, it's innocent comparably, isn't it? One is an extreme bad behaviour acting upon addictions. The other is like what most people would classify as minor bad behaviour. But if you look at the underlying emotions, still very unloving. Good day.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Okay.
So we have groups in the second speed we've been coming to this talk, and
You can talk later.
there's a group of second sphere spirits who've been coming here, and they want to help people on earth with progressions, but they haven't having problems with that.
Mm.
And then, well, there's always so many spirits around, isn't there? But then I was trying, I've been, asking for Charles as well, and I feel like I could channel him. Taz Russell.
Oh,
Yep.
yep.
But also I'm open to requests. John's here.
What do you want to do?
Well, I thought we could start with Sapphire, the group of second sphere spirits.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's a warm up, isn't it? And then for
Well,
me.
it depends what you want to do.
Yeah. Well, she's easy.
You're the better of us.
Yeah. That's what I'd like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd like to maybe try Charles,
All right.
depending on our time.
Okay.
It's 3 o'clock. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Hi there.
Howdy. Sapphire, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mary's already told you probably, but we are a group of spirits in the second sphere
Mm-hmm.
from our estimations and what we've been told we're in the second sphere now.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been coming to talks for quite a while. Thank you so much. But we kind of observe things in the group of people coming,
Mm-hmm.
and we know we're not yet appointed as guides, but we'd like to help people and we try to inspire them.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that we have a hard time helping them with. And
So what types of things have you tried to help people with and found it difficult?
well, sometimes we sort of, we're now on God's path.
Yeah.
And learning more about it all the time, and every minute really.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have progressed seems pretty quick,
Mm-hmm.
from the really low parts of the first sphere.
In comparison to what you were doing before.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
heaps better. But what we feel is that a lot of people, we feel like we're grasping more and more what you are teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously now we have guides who are helping us to learn this way.
Yeah.
But we see that a lot of people, there's 2 things. There's lots of things, but let's start with 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
One is that the people on Earth, what we can see would be their progression, they think is their degradation.
Mm. Can you give an illustration of that, just so people here know what you're talking about?
Yeah. Like sometimes we see people coming up to a point in their relationship with God where they're about to sort of have a breakdown emotionally that they need to have in that relationship in order to really start that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then they think that that's a bit nuts or out of control or stupid, or you kind of withdraw from that.
Yeah.
And
so in
then,
other words, having a breakdown would make them progress,
yes,
but they don't want to have the breakdown for lots of different reasons, and so they don't end up progressing,
yes.
even though they think that not having the breakdown is a good thing.
Yes, they think that the very thing that they need to do to progress would actually be them not progressing.
Yeah.
Like telling the truth is a really common one that we see
Yeah,
that
that's very
most
good.
people here don't want to do.
Yeah.
But it's really, they have to do it to progress. We've had to learn that.
That's right.
And
So this is part of the actions people have to take.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also to have the feelings, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's so important. But often people get to a point where they're almost in those feelings, and then they make one of those decisions, like you just said before, to withdraw from that.
Yeah.
And then,
So they're almost being
Yeah.
humble to the feeling.
or they're almost at the point of readiness to feel the feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and then they take an action to subdue the feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try and suppress themselves instead
Yes.
of allow them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also there seems to be a lot of misunderstanding about what it means to be kind to other people in relationships.
Yes. Yeah. An
And
example of that you might want to give.
well, everyone sort of seems to feel that everyone else should feel comfortable, all the time. And we've had to learn that there's many times when we feel uncomfortable
When your guides come to you, for example.
and tell us things, or we have to explore our feelings in ways that we haven't before, or come to feel feelings from God even that make us feel uncomfortable initially. But we've come to understand that that's growth. But a lot of people here seem to feel that being uncomfortable is almost a sign of weakness or a sign of their lack of development, when really we can't see any other way to develop apart from feeling uncomfortable quite a lot of the time.
Yeah, and you know, I suppose we've already explained to people on Earth, haven't we, a lot about, you know, if you're in a certain place and where you've got to go is in a higher place, and obviously you're comfortable where you are, and you've got to move to a place of discomfort. That the average person doesn't relate that to their own life very much.
And change. And we really want to help people, because we feel very excited at the moment about what we are learning and the things happening for us, and just the absolute sort of joy that we feel in truth and in living now, that is just wasn't there before. And so often we want to help people to see when they're in these like pitfalls that we see them sort of repeating. But we find it's quite difficult because they kind of feel like, sometimes they call it negative spirit influence, where we encourage them towards the thing that would help them.
And they're saying, oh, I'm just getting negative
I'm
influence.
getting pressured by spirits, and we're like, we know that there's negative spirit influence. We're not trying to say that doesn't exist, but we find that the way people view kindness and the way they feel that relationships should be, so relationships with us and with God and each other, they all think that it should be nicey.
Smooth and nice.
And like, I'm saying nicey because it's not really nice, but it's sort of like everyone's got to play a game or something.
And be comfortable, like you said.
And be comfortable.
And be comfortable,
Yeah.
Well, when you find out how to do that, you have to let me know.
We were hoping you were going to tell us. How do you do it?
Well, as you know, it's difficult, isn't it? You know, once you've made a shift emotionally yourselves, you can sort of feel like truth is so important, and letting yourself be uncomfortable all the time is so important as well, isn't it? Letting yourself feel stretched, you know, all the time. Letting yourself and letting yourself feel like, put myself in a new uncomfortable situation is important as well. And then, of course, there's a whole heap of truths you receive from people who are more developed than yourself that often, initially you go, oh no, it's like, you know, that didn't feel very good to me. It feel very good to me, or very, they didn't feel very kind mentioning all that to me. And then after a while you realise actually that is kindness, because it's actually saved you so much time and so much energy going down the wrong track.
And it seems like people are quite cold towards each other here. Because they're not truthful, and they're not willing to be themselves, and so that.
And to resolve problems.
And that's that thing we're saying. They think that like being truthful and being themselves is a degradation. They don't understand how much they think being truthful is a degradation.
They think it's a degradation.
When they consider being really truthful, they think, oh, that would be terribly mean, or that would be terribly unloving, or people would think terribly of me, or and they sort of don't see that just really being themselves is the only way that they'll feel connected to each other as well, like and feel love with each other. Like at the moment, everyone here feels very like cold towards each other. That's very true. But then the only way they think to be like warm to each other is the nicey, but if they were really honest, they'd feel that feels fake. And so, but then when we try to encourage them, we'll just be real here, or then they sort of don't hear us. Like they sort of
feel like, I can't go there. I can't go there.
I couldn't possibly do that. That would be unloving.
Well, like I said, I know it's the same problem everywhere I teach, really, and there's little that can be done about it from an external perspective, in a way, isn't it?
Yes, and it just creates such a division, doesn't it, between loving influence and people who want to grow. It's a funny thing for us. We never really thought about it until we were in this position ourselves. But we now feel genuinely, for a lot of us, for the first time in our lives, that we want to love others and help, like really assist others.
To help them be happier in the long run.
Yes, to help them for themselves to be happy.
Mm.
And now that we really want to do this, it almost feels like we've grown to a point where people can't hear us anymore.
Mm. Mm. And that's exactly what happens. And it is difficult because if you're trying to help people and you've made those changes yourself, you understand the joys of those changes.
Yeah.
But the people you're relating to or trying to relate to don't understand the joys of those changes.
Mm.
And so and they even feel that those changes are negative.
Yeah.
And they even feel like, no, that's a bad place to go.
Mm.
And the problem with that, as you know, is that there's a stronger disconnect between yourself and those people then.
Yeah.
Even though you'd like to help them.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's how it feels. And there is sort of another thing that we notice in common here is that there's sort of this feeling of like, somebody mentioned authority before, Alan mentioned authority before. There's this feeling that about getting in trouble and about because the truth is told very directly here by you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a feeling of associating that with getting told off, and then no one wants to do it with each other because they think they're telling each other off when they don't. That's not our experience, and also we really want to say that God's not like that. It's not.
Motivation for information sharing is not to harm people, is it?
Yes. Yeah. And we've reached a point now in our progress that we can see if God or our guide or someone loving shares something with us truthfully, and sometimes we feel shame or loss or regret or even like just embarrassment sometimes, like just you know, we've come to feel like that's part of the discomfort of growing as well, and also that it's something in us. It's sort of being able for the first time to be able to separate our felt experience from the feelings of the people who are in front of us. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does to me. I'm not sure about the rest of the audience.
This is where we want you to explain it. Could you explain it? Yeah. Could you help them to hear us?
That's right. And do you feel that if they can't hear me, that they're going to hear you?
No.
It's hard, isn't it? Because if they can't hear someone who's sitting in front of them, how are they going to hear someone who's invisible to them? Is really the question, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And it's a question for us, and we're not coming to. Now we can feel everyone's sort of feeling
get
bad.
told off again.
Yes, and like they've done something wrong. But really, it's just a conundrum we're having. Yeah. That we want to be able to assist people and. And we can see how many false beliefs on the earth prevent that loving connection between the spirit world and the earth. Yeah.
And these are realizations that are really important to have, aren't they? And most people on earth don't realise that once they have those realisations, they'll feel the same way you do. You know, and it's also indicative, if you don't feel this way that you currently feel, then it means you've not yet had those realisations. So, and you know, in that regard, it's sort of like you guys are in the second sphere. You can see also that the condition of the second sphere is a group of people who have these realisations.
Yeah.
You know? And so most people on earth are not in the second sphere, they're in the first, obviously. Yeah. And so what that means is that most of the people are not in the second sphere because they're yet to have these realisations about truth and love and humility and faith and the importance of open and honest discussion and open and honest discussion about everything, like faults and things that you feel bad about and feeling, and also this sort of idea that people have on earth a lot is all, for most people on earth, are just seeking their comfort until they die.
Yeah.
They're sort of seeking more comfort until I'm dead, and then they don't realise that actually if they continue that life in the spirit world, then they're going to also stay in a place that's quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that was many of us.
Yeah.
And that's why perhaps today I wanted to stress the issue about discomfort and how we've come to, it's almost like our relationship with feeling uncomfortable has changed even.
Correct.
It's not
right.
It's not such a thing we resist anymore. It's not such a thing
It's
we dread
almost
anymore.
something you look forward to because
Yes.
you know, if I'm uncomfortable, I'm growing.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
if I'm uncomfortable, it means I'm being stretched. If I'm
Yeah.
uncomfortable, it means there's change happening.
Yeah.
If you stay comfortable, as you thought you were in the hills, of course the hills are a bit different than Earth, isn't it? You can sort of maintain on Earth this illusion you're comfortable, whereas in the hills you can't really maintain an illusion that it's comfortable anymore.
And that's the tricky thing about progress on Earth. That's part of our question. Like, how do we help people with this? Because here it's so obvious. It's like maybe not as you come up to the breakdown, if you like, but as you're in it, you really feel things changing around you so clearly. And if you resist it, you do know that your environment gets worse. So you kind of but on Earth, it's so constructed to
reward it. To reward it,
yes.
Yeah.
And that's another thing about the comfort-discomfort thing that we wanted to say. It's like a shift, a transition has happened for us where it's like on Earth, everyone believes the only time you can relax is when you're comfortable. And when you're uncomfortable, it's a tension and a resistance and a stress. And there's this new freedom that we feel where discomfort is not, you can relax in your discomfort. It sounds odd to say it in words and perhaps very difficult to understand on Earth, but you can be in a state where you feel
well, it's a shift into true humility, isn't it? When you're truly humble, you get to a state when, if you're truly humble, you're really comfortable with anything that happens, in the sense that it brings you peace to know that it's all going to be to your benefit and improvement.
Yes, and it's sort of like the discomfort. It doesn't feel pleasurable when it's discomfort. But it's not something to survive or resist. It's something to sort of surrender to, and that's what I mean by sort of being able to relax into it.
Because you're letting things wash over you rather than fighting them.
And through you almost.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I used to liken it to people juggling. You know, like when you're juggling and you got 5 or 6 balls in the air, and you just keep juggling. It's quite a stressful situation actually after a while, isn't it? Because you're juggling all these things in life, they're getting juggle. And people don't realise that if I just let go and not juggle anymore, then it means that all the balls are going to fall to the floor, right? But it also means that I don't have to juggle.
That's an example of what we mean when we say people think that that's a degradation.
Yeah.
It's actually exactly that. When we came to understand, it's too much work to keep up this facade, and it's hurting us, and it's too much work to keep meeting the addictions of other people, and it's hurting us, and it's too much.
Can you also see though that there was a value you placed on keeping the balls in the air?
Totally.
And that's the other thing, is that most people on Earth have a value of keeping certain things going, you know.
They get their worth from it, they get their sense of purpose from it, they get their sense of relationships from it.
Yeah.
And then when you realise, oh, no, none of that's actually real, that's not, you're not actually getting those things from it. But this is the problem that we're having, where people still want to believe that that's doing well, is the juggling. And we can see, just drop, we like your example, just drop the balls, and then that's when the real progress happens. But that's when everyone thinks, oh, now I'm a mess, and now here's all my sin. And before, when I had every show on the road, yes, everything was fine. But actually, we're trying to say to them, not fine. I guess the main way we're trying to help people with this at the moment is trying to sort of encourage them to be sensitive to what they really feel in each situation. But it's very tricky.
Particularly when they don't want to be sensitive.
Yeah. To sort of help. And also we had this feeling of wonder about free will. Like, how much do
you let them get away with that?
Yeah, and how much do you impress upon a person?
That's right. That's what I mean by as a spirit. Do you really impress it like full on? And maybe in some ways that's why some people might feel
pressure. Yes, and that's
like
why
it's bad spirit influence.
Yes, because we're just learning the ropes here too.
Yeah, I get it.
We don't want to make people feel pressured or make people under our control in any way, because that would be the opposite of what needs to happen.
Correct.
And we don't want to be a cheer squad. Go for it, you know.
Because then
but sometimes, yes. And then they're not feeling for themselves or deciding for themselves.
That's right, yeah.
But there must be a way to convey this deep faith that we now have, that it's possible.
No.
So even our purpose in coming here, you're saying, is wrong.
Well,
that's what we
no,
want
I think
to
it's
do.
very beneficial, Sapphire, because you get to share with the group people on Earth what some of the frustrations of being in the second sphere, first listening to God and getting connected with God's truth in a true way. How you want to help people, but you realise, sometimes I'm a bit overbearing sometimes if I do that or if I do this, so you sort of back off.
And then you feel that, and then you think, okay, I can't do that. What can I do?
What can I do?
There's this feeling of like deep compassion now, and this sort of feels like a burning desire growing in some of us to assist, but also we're aware that God hasn't appointed us as a guide, so we know we're not qualified yet.
I get you. Yeah, but it's great that you have the desire to help people though.
Yeah.
But as you can see, the more you make substantial changes inside of yourself, the difficulty then becomes like, how do you encourage others to make the same substantial changes? Because particularly when you're in the phase of it that you're immediately seeing the benefits of doing it, and particularly the benefits of letting go of everything, right? You're immediately seeing the benefits of that. And it's just like, why doesn't everybody get this? There's sort of this underlying feeling, isn't it? Like, why can't I?
Well, why can't it just? It's more like we've sort of learned a bit. No, encouraging, that's not it. You can't cheer people. You can't discourage. You can't affect will.
Yeah.
But then now we're on this thing of like, but you need to be able to just tell them the truth. Like, no,
that's true.
That thing you think is a breakdown is a breakthrough.
Yeah.
That kind of. How can we do that?
Well, I think you are doing that, aren't you?
Well, now.
Yeah, right. In the conversation now that Mary's let you have a say, and you're now doing it. But also, you can't force people to accept truths, even though you know they're beneficial to them. Yeah. It's obviously, as you know, it's an act of love to let people make a decision with their own will. And you're dead right that most people who come to these regular Saturdays haven't made that decision to make it, something where they just let everything go and actually embrace all the principles of God's truth in a true way. Most people haven't made that decision. Even oftentimes when they think they haven't. That is also true. But what else can you do without sort of breaking the law? And to be frank, I don't think there's much else you can do without breaking the law. You see. Yeah.
And we want to express our acknowledge you for the work that you're doing, because like you said, it's so limited here, and what we see is, so the first sphere is closest in condition to the Earth's condition, and that's where the most communication happens. We see that, we've observed now that we're
with spirits as well, isn't it?
Spirits and the Earth.
Yeah.
First sphere, spirits and the Earth. That's where the spirit world connects with the Earth at the moment.
Yeah.
And we can see how certain spirits, even with like a fledgling desire to help people on earth, start to try and do that work from the first sphere, but
without respect for free will and things like that.
yes, and without really a knowledge of love. You know, it's
or
so
a knowledge
rudimentary.
of like God and humility and all those principles of truth as well.
Yeah, and it's only spirits who are more are less respectful of free will, or who believe in addiction, also believe in people feeling good for the short time that they're on earth, is what they've told us. You just need to help people feel good, so help them get what they want, help them sort of, maybe sometimes help them to have more real relationships, because it's pretty widely accepted the higher you get in the spirit spheres that relationships bring about happiness, you know, true loving relationships do, even before people really are aware of God. There's that acknowledgement. So sometimes there's this attempt to help people have real relationships on earth, but it's never with regard to free will. Like sometimes spirit try to
fundamental principles even either, is it, of truth and humility and all of those things either.
And so we see that it just feels so, we feel like it's just so hard to bridge the gap, even from the second sphere to the earth, and have communication. But then we feel overwhelmed because it's the work that you're doing that is going to help that to happen. Like, and we can't get there again while honouring free will. We can't overcloak people or do things if we want to grow ourselves and love God's way.
That's right.
And so, we are also just wanting to acknowledge that work that you do, because it's
can you also feel though that some of the feelings you're having are sort of almost like sort of a bit of sorrow, that now that you've learnt some of these lessons, that it's become more difficult to share the lessons?
And we're just aware of that in this conversation, that the feeling that we can't love people as much as we want to. And we get that that's obviously an injury, but it is, you're right, there's a sadness that comes up that feels like the more that we want to love, the less our love is felt.
On earth in particular, the less opportunities there seem to be allowed for it.
And it also feels because a lot of the things that we've worked through recently, or relatively recently, relate to our life on earth. And many of us still have family on earth, and we want to be able to help the earth, and not just our family, just like everybody. But there is this sadness that it feels like the more we grow, the less we're hurt, and it feels like we want it to be the opposite. And so we regret some of the things we said, you know, to influence people in the first sphere, because now that we're in the second sphere, we can see there was flaws in that. No, it is tricky, and that's why the 14 chose to come back to Earth. Because you, at least on Earth, you can be in their face a bit, can't you? without controlling their will and without controlling their action, you can at least say, no, you're wrong. Well, you can say the thing that we want to say, which is that thing you think that is bad about you, or that is bad for your future, is good. And that thing you think is good is not good. Is not good, and it's going to create pain and suffering for the whole world. So thank you for doing that. And obviously, people having their own relationship with God, we can see how that would, I mean, vastly. We could definitely communicate with them much better then, but they probably wouldn't need us as much then. You know, but we could be friends, and that would be nice. And we could enjoy their personality and the nature of people, because another thing that we felt to come and say was that nobody's getting to enjoy each other's nature and personality very much, because everyone's trying to hide it, and that's the thing that we love the most in everybody, is their nature and personality. No, you did right. And I think it's good that you've said it. But even by saying it doesn't mean there's going to be any change. No, and we know some people feel guilty now and told off, and please know that that's not our motivation, and that we really we love each of you, and we're really excited for your growth and have faith in your growth, even though we know many times you each lack it for yourselves. Just encourage everyone to have quiet time to listen for spirit friends.
Yeah. So Sapphire, when did you pass?
In 1956.
Yeah. And what?
And my name wasn't Sapphire.
What country did you come from?
And Czechoslovakia.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So not anything really to do with Australia or Australians. And I had a fairly, routine life on earth, can I say that? I had a fairly traditional, I was a mother, I was a wife and a mother, and I had a job, not a very professional job, but I cleaned people's houses in my life. That was my main occupation. And
important job.
Yeah. And I died in my early 70s. And so I saw quite a bit of change in my own country in my lifetime.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. And
been through 2 world wars
quite
as well.
a lot of suffering.
2 world wars.
And perhaps that opened me to the suffering of others I don't know. I didn't feel very connected to any great deal of personal suffering. But obviously, as I've been here in the spirit life, I've come to see there was many things I hardened my heart to in order to do what I thought I needed to do to survive.
Yeah, which is the balls that need to be dropped.
Exactly.
Yeah, gotcha.
And partly I see the interconnectedness of everybody thinks the world is like the earth is a vast place, and yet from this perspective the pain and suffering and the lives of everyone are so interconnected. You see the course or the carriage of through generations and across countries and nations of love and injury, and it all seems so connected and so small, really, and so easy to fix, really.
Yeah, so unnecessary as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so unnecessary, the pain, and yet even in my lifetime, which was really it was before the internet and before all these things, that was still happening. There was still the pain being passed across countries and through relationships, not just through wars. And so I sort of feel like at this point in my progression that everyone on earth is my family, and everyone they are descendants, if you like, of my pain and suffering in a way, or they have what I've had to work through is present in people because of that interconnectedness. It's like generations of pain and crossing borders and everywhere, families, and I feel so like it's a next generation of what I feel connected to it in a way, not in a painful way, but I
want to help it.
I want to help it, but also I feel connected to it through my life experience. It's not connected to it is the wrong word.
But these are feelings that you will feel as you progress. You feel more and a stronger and stronger desire to help others, but also some level of frustration that the further you progress, the less people are listening to you.
I have faith. I have faith that God will show us that. That love is. That's what God's telling me. Love is not wasted. Love is not without power.
That's right.
And that just even my love without action or without my actions being received or heard or my words being that it has. I just don't yet understand how that's powerful. How that.
That's often the case when we first feel the changes that you're currently making. You sort of feel like, I need to do something. I need to do something. I need to say things. I need to, and you feel quite a strong imperative to do all of those things, without understanding sometimes the power of love and how that has an effect on the environment you're in as well, you know.
Mm.
And so you feel sort of driven to more action, when actually just your presence can have a fair enough effect. You know?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. And that's, yeah, thank you. Because, yes, as we were talking, I could feel that from God, that it's not without effect, but even just your words have helped me to understand more what that means, or to have a feeling of what that means, that just even being here among you and having a loving desires, even if it's just every Saturday or every but we're here more than that. We're with each of you more than that. But even just being present has an effect, and it's just not well understood by us yet.
Yeah. Shall we see if the audience wants to ask you some questions? You'd be happy to answer some questions from the audience.
Sure.
Yeah. Rani, would you like to start?
I didn't know I felt that way until you guys were talking, but I feel quite possibly you've been around me a lot.
Yes, absolutely, Rani.
Yeah, and I guess I've been feeling like you're a negative influence, I think.
Yeah, and something that perhaps there's a lady, Caroline here, who's been with you more directly than myself. I've been around you also, but she's sort of taken on more of a special interest in yourself. And because she's had a similar life on earth, especially around issues of control, and she's been really feeling very hopeful and inspired for you in recent months, that you come very close to this, you're gaining this, or through her presence and through her, obviously your guides are trying to help you with this as well, but you've had this inspiration that I need to give up control, I need to let go of something. But then when you get very close to it, and she's very excited, you often feel like digging your heels in, backing off, and just back off. I'm being pressured now.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, how do I know that that's what's going to happen in me? And what do you mean?
Well, we'll try to answer from our current condition, but it seems to us that understanding what it is you're resisting would help you a lot. So being sensitive to what it is you're resisting, because often when you're being encouraged to give up control, you just want to say, I'm being pressured, without really feeling, no, I just don't want to give up control. You sort of, you're not analysing, if you like, what the inspiration or the loving, because all of God's laws, it's not just us, it's all of God's laws, and your guides and God are all trying to say, Rani, it's a great idea to give up control. Rani, this is going to change your life. Rani, you're not even yourself yet until you give up control. You know, Rani, you're lonely because you don't want to give up control. All of these things. And then you feel like, oh, I'm getting pressured and it's just heavy, but you're not sort of, you don't want to say, what am I resisting?
Just one thing I'd like to say, Sapphire, is for yourself, Rani, if you cast your mind back to when you were doing more sinful things, did you feel like you were getting pressured to do sinful things?
I don't know that I've thought about it, but I guess not.
That's right. You didn't feel pressured. So why is it now, when you're encouraged to do things that are not sinful, you're starting to feel pressured?
It's because you don't want to give up control.
Yeah.
And Caroline's also reminding you about an issue you have with your mother, where you get very defiant, and so then you associate when there's a loving course of action but you don't want to take it, and there's loving spirit saying this is a good idea, especially Caroline's found as a woman, you often feel like it's defines that your mother, that's not dealt with properly. Yeah, you don't want to
But it's
listen.
interesting when spirits, even women spirits, were encouraging you to do sinful things, you didn't feel that. So that's interesting, isn't it? So in itself. So why do you feel that? You've got to ponder about why that is. Why when you talk to somebody who is encouraging you to do something that's morally good, that you feel pressured, and when somebody's encouraging you to do something morally bad, you don't feel pressured. So that's indicative of the fact that you have a tendency towards the wanting to do the morally bad thing, and you think that morally bad thing is going to benefit you. So when it comes to control, you feel control will benefit you. And so if somebody is encouraging you to control, you don't see that as pressure. You see that as support.
Yeah, right, I get that, yeah.
Yeah. And it's it's exactly what we said at the beginning. It's a big problem that we have when we're trying to encourage you, or to show you, not even encourage, Caroline saying, just show you the next best step, if you like, or the next that you often feel that you're not being loved.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
It's good to talk to you, Riley. He says.
You too.
Do you want to ask me this?
What was your name on Earth, and what's your home like in the spirit world now?
My name on the earth is a little bit hard for Mary to pronounce. Yes.
It's in Czechoslovakia.
Yes, but it's something resembling Anja or something. There's a TJZ in there somewhere. Sorry, that's why I like Sapphire.
It's probably why she likes Sapphire too. But it's also why Sapphire likes Sapphire.
Yeah. Yeah. And my home in the spirit world it's very beautiful, although I'm told there's more beautiful places to come. But I live in a place that has a lot of natural world around it. When I lived in Czechoslovakia, I lived in more of a suburban area, and there was a lot of pollution. And when I first came to the spirit world, I was in a very similar kind of an environment with a lot of people and sort of sooty and dirty. And now I have a little house. I like it. It's like a cottage, and there's a little brook, there's a little stream that runs next to it, and it's always full of clean water, and it's just beautiful. It's a big gift to me.
Brittany?
I was wondering what helped you make your shifts when it came to your relationship with God and becoming comfortable with your discomfort and the things that you expressed before, the things that we're yet to make that you're helping us with. What helped you?
Yeah. Hi, Brittany. This is part of our troubles that we were coming to Jesus with, is that we, obviously each of us had different levels of suffering when we entered the spirit world. There were some, but we did have, so if I speak for myself, I did sort of have this feeling about that, it was kind of when I first came to the spirit life, it was kind of, I felt very resigned to the fact that suffering was a part of everyone's life, and it was like a hopeless shutdown kind of numb or angry feeling that I had about it. I wasn't willing, but I knew desperately that I didn't want to create more suffering for others. Or that's the way I've kind of lived my life. I didn't want to create more suffering for others, but I didn't want to connect to my own suffering, and I didn't want to feel how hopeless I felt with God about suffering and so on. But after a little while, well, when I say a little while, it's 20 years in the spirit world probably, I began to just possibly due to my feeling that I didn't want to create more suffering for others, I began to attract different interactions with brighter spirits. Some of them were just still in the first sphere, just helping me to, I suppose, connect to the pain of my earth life. And I was very fortunate because when I did that, I could see my surroundings improved a bit. And I could also see that my interactions with my family that were still on earth I suddenly felt that I wasn't, it's a hard thing. I think it's probably the operation of the conscience, but I began to feel that when I visited the earth, that I was having more of a positive impact than a negative one, if that makes sense. I didn't really, when I was first visiting them, think that I was making a negative impact, but by starting to connect to my own suffering in the spirit world, which happened, it was 20 years before I started that process, and I got to quite I suppose it was a point where I was feeling very low, less numb and more unhappy and more sort of closer to my pain, but not really releasing it. And then I attracted some interactions with actually male spirits in the spirit world who helped me to connect to some pain that I'd had in relationships with my grandfather and my father on earth, and that helped me to start to feel the truth of what had happened and some grief. And then when I visited my grandchildren on earth, I suddenly felt like, oh, this feels better. That I feel like my conscience, I didn't call it my conscience then, but my conscience told me I'm not hurting them as much, or I was hurting them before, and that really inspired me to keep doing what I was doing, to keep feeling my pain. But of course I had the benefit that each time I did that, my environment got better. And so that's part of my questions for Jesus today. How do I help a person who doesn't necessarily have that change in their environment? How do I help them to become more sensitive to the conscience, or to the positive changes, or even the different spirit associations that they have when they do make changes?
And it's not like, Sapphire does know that if you make changes on earth, there is a change in your environment. The problem she sees is that you don't measure it.
You don't see it.
Yeah.
And if we talk about something that Nikki said earlier when we were just sort of connecting to Mary, and he was talking about how you can sort of make good decisions, bad decision, good decision, then connect to a causal emotion and make a big jump. In our experience, it's not been, you have to consistently make good decisions
for progress.
For even to connect to that cause. There's only two ways it happens. One is that things get very, 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 very bad, like for me in 20 years in the spirit world, and then you start to feel, and you still you still have to be dedicated to the forward movement then. There's no time where you really make significant changes when you keep going, good decision, bad decision, good decision, bad decision, good decision, bad decision, because the bad decision always takes you away from the causal...
and the shifting point.
The shifting point,
the turning point.
Yes. And because it changes the associations around you, the spirit associations, your environment, your relationships, every bad decision, that degradation... Really, you need to be in a place of, I think you called it sincerity, or like desire, we call it like desire for the forward progression, the forward movement, consistently for a time before the real causal connection, really what you call, we don't have so many names about it.
Feel it, isn't it? Yeah.
That's right, you need to open your soul and create an environment around yourself that sort of promotes that, even if it's just through your own will or your own isolation sometimes, or your own changing. Like sometimes, this is what we were trying to say before, sometimes when you become more truthful. Some of you have experimented with that. Some of you, it's quite some years ago now, but you become more truthful, and then you feel like a relationship breaks down, or you don't speak to your family anymore, and then you go, oh, now I'm in a worse state, or it's a worse environment, or my life is a mess. And from our perspective, we're like, oh, this is good. The environment's getting better. There's more truth. There's less lies. There's less facade. This is a good thing, but many times you will measure that as a bad thing, and then go back to, you stop making the good decisions which you view as bad, and then start making the decisions that are
actually bad.
Actually bad. Actually bad for the
good.
environment around you and for your own spiritual progression. Yeah. So we know, Brittany, that you're trying to ask that question so that you can so that you can apply some of what we did to your progression, and that's a great aspiration. But it feels different for us, and it feels like we're trying to help you from the situation that you're in, and we humbly acknowledging that we're not your guides, so we're not totally qualified, but we just really like to help. Yeah.
But the advantage of Sapphire and the group, with her having recently gone through these experiences, means that these experiences are really raw for them. Does that make sense to you, Brittany? And because it's really raw for them, they can see what shifts you need to make. Sometimes it's more powerful than it is for somebody who's in the 6th sphere to come along, or the 8th sphere to come along and tell you about something that happened to them 2,000 years ago, or So and you'll find this yourself, when you start going through your own stuff and it gets really raw for you and it gets really real, then you go, oh, I want to help everybody else, go through these same experiences, and that's really good because at the time you're remembering or going through the experience, you're remembering it very clearly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As time goes on, what happens, the experiences that you had to make you have some primary shifts become old memories, because you're just experiencing new things all the time, and the joys of the new things far outshadow the shift you made on the old thing, and you start sort of almost not forgetting, but you sort of, it doesn't, a discussion about those things doesn't appeal to you as much. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the reason why this is appealing to Sapphire so much is she knows this. She's not far removed from what you need to do, and she's just done it, and she's feeling the benefits of it, and she knows you will feel the benefit of it too if you do it. And then it's sort of like, how do I help Brittany make that feel the benefit? Like, how do I help her feel what I'm now feeling when it wasn't long ago where I wasn't feeling this? Yeah.
Yes, and it's that thing that I was trying to express before about the feeling of connection, not responsibility or not sharing the pain, but this feeling of connectedness with the sin of the world in a way, and the way to move through it. And when we were in the 1st sphere, it just felt like we were sort of in the muck with everyone on the earth, like contributing or trying not to, and then and then it feels like in this state we're in now, in the 2nd sphere, there's this passionate desire to help, as you say, but we almost have a premonition that by the 3rd sphere we'll feel removed again from the earth, and it's sort of
which is
like
natural.
a special time here. It feels like a special time.
And it's often spirits in the 2nd sphere that have a greater positive influence on people on earth than spirits in the 3rd, 4th or 5th, for this reason, except for the love influence, which Sapphire is not really feeling or understanding so much at this point. In terms of their impact, in terms of what they want to share, the truths they want to share, and the benefits of it, if you could feel their enthusiasm for the changes they've just made, you would want to do it too. But the difficulty they have now is sharing their enthusiasm with you for those changes when when they feel more distant. They feel enthusiastic for the change, but they also can feel that you feel like, no, I don't want to make that change. So and yet they're feeling more enthusiastic for you to make the change, as well as very happy that they have made the change. And so it's a tricky place, like when you make those changes, particularly on God's path in the second sphere and the third sphere, because you're feeling like, I'd like to help everybody make these changes, but you feel more removed from helping them make the change because they're more removed from the way you think and feel. So it's quite difficult in that regard. Yeah.
There is someone in our group called Sam who's been trying to help Brittany, and he's just saying that, we understand that at this point in your life, there's addictions with spirits and like a limit. It's very limiting to your life, the addictions with spirits. But you don't yet see that when you decide to connect to your personality and nature, and just you're always pulling your passion and drive back into yourself. But when you really want to feel yourself and really you have a lot of passion and drive, and if you let that out, then it's almost like the spirits around you won't be able to keep up anymore. They won't be able to, but you must make a decision. I want to express my passion,
and want your life, not their life.
Yeah, this enthusiasm for life that he's saying you're just always squashing it in yourself. Yeah.
Remember we talked about that Thursday night, didn't we? Yeah.
Thank you.
Just encourage you.
Now, how are we going to toilet, guys? Yeah, time for a break. What if we have a break? And are you guys okay coming back and talking some more?
Yep. Yeah, for sure.